Welcome to the only place where real, raw, and vulnerable conversations happen with IFBB Bikini Pros to give you an inside look at their struggles, strategies, mindset, passions, and all of life beyond the stage. This podcast is made to inspire, motivate, and remind competitors and the average gym goer that even the most extreme lifestyles and elite athletes have their ups and downs. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm your host, Celeste Rains-Turk, and now it's time for the Confessions of a Bikini Pro podcast. Today's guest is a AFPA certified holistic nutritionist, vegan, mom, wife, and business owner who has been bodybuilding for 3 years and became a pro in the Masters over 35 division at NPC North Americans before going on to place top 5 in every Masters Pro show she did after that, if I'm not mistaken. Welcome to the show, Niccole Guggia. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. What an introduction. Oh my gosh, so exciting.
I'm so excited to have you. Seriously, I loved prepping your episode like I told you before, and I'm really glad that some people reached out and recommended that you came on the show, which is really great. And of course, I
didn't know that.
Yes,
cool.
yes. Some people did say you got to get her on. So I was like, awesome. So I'm glad that worked out. And, I like to start off by asking if there's anything you do or ritual you have right before your heel hits the stage.
I do. So prior to getting on the stage, I really I visualize it like every night when I go to bed. Pretty much through my whole prep, I close my eyes as I'm drifting off to sleep, and I visualize what it's going to be like when I'm lined up, stepping on that stage, my smile, my confidence, kind of go through the whole routine in my mind. And so when it comes time for me to actually be in person and real life on stage, I kind of feel like I've already been here. I've already played it so many times in my head that it just feels very comfortable for me. Of course, there's a little bit of jitters, but I just kind of take a deep breath and think, Niccole, you worked so hard for this moment. Don't let any nerves, any distractions take away from this moment. Just go out there, do what you've been practicing. I practice my posing like a mad woman. So it's just do what you've been doing. This is just another chance for you to do it. And so I really just bring myself out of my nerves and just a deep breath and go out there. I try to, that moment when you're standing on the stairs waiting for your turn, I really smile. I stand up as tall as possible, shoulders back, that posture that just exudes confidence, because they're already seeing you. The cameras are kind of on you already. And when you can set that posture up before you even walk out, you'll get it the minute you walk out. So that's kind of my little ritual. It's nothing big. It's just really just getting into, your zone.
Yes, absolutely. I love how you said that you go through that routine in your head. You're already envisioning that moment throughout your prep, and how that's actually helped you to get familiar with it. I think that's a really good insight. And I'm going to be talking to you more about various things that you do to support yourself mentally through your prep process. But I want to start by asking you how you got into bodybuilding after becoming a vegan. And if you could just tell us more about what was going on at that time with your health and how that led you to pursuing this lifestyle.
Yeah, so it was kind of an interesting journey. I know everybody gets introduced to it in a different way. And mine started with being vegan, actually. So I had started developing some health issues, just weird digestive stuff. I was having tingling in my extremities. I was having lots of brain fog. This was all prior to going vegan. And I saw so many doctors. I went to GI doctors. I went to my normal doctor. I mean, I was something is wrong with me, and I don't know what it is. And every doctor was just oh, here, take this medication, take this. Maybe it's in your head, maybe you're stressed. all of these things. And I kind of was like, am I ever going to feel better? Like, what's happening? And so I just started researching on my own and really looking at healing myself naturally. And it really just led me into the plant-based lifestyle. And at the time, I didn't know anybody who was vegan. I really didn't know much about that lifestyle at all. It wasn't something that I had set out to be. But I was like, you know what? Like, I'm so desperate to regain my health that I'm going to try it. So that was in, I think 2017, I set out to do 30 days of plant-based and just to see how I felt, how my body responded. And so I went all in. I just got onto Google and Pinterest and was like, okay, how do I do this? Like, I didn't even know what I could eat, what I couldn't eat. So I just researched a lot and decided, it was like middle of June of 2017. And I'm like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this for 30 days and see. And I'm not kidding, within like 2 weeks, the majority of my symptoms were gone. I couldn't believe it. I was like, how has this all been related to the food I was eating? And I was always somebody who was healthy. Like I ate the chicken and the broccoli and the asparagus, and I was a healthy eater. I've always been fit and into that lifestyle, and so I really didn't think it was anything that was like necessarily food related, but I think it was. And so anyway, so I went vegan, did that 30 days, and then continued it, obviously, because I was just getting better and better, and I was starting to just feel alive again, and I had so much energy. And my husband was always into weight training, and we had gone on a vacation to Bora Bora, and they call it Boring Bora because there's like nothing to do in Bora Bora. And so he convinced me to go to this little tiny hotel gym, and I lifted weights with him for a week, and I fell in love with it. Like, I was like, this is so much fun. This is better than all of the HIIT cardio boot camp stuff I was doing before. And so I got back from that trip, and I decided I'm going to hire a trainer. I'm going to like dive into this full on. And so I Googled vegan personal trainer because I really wanted to have somebody that supported my vegan lifestyle to kind of help me train as a vegan athlete. And so I found my first coach. Her name was Sam Shorkey. She lives in Canada. And I never set out to be a competitor. Like, I didn't even know that was a thing. Like, my knowledge of bodybuilding was like Arnold and all the guys and the big guys. I had no idea that there was like bikini bodybuilding. So when I hired Sam, she was let me get this right. She was the first vegan natural bikini pro. And I was like, oh, what does that mean? Like, I was like asking her, being really inquisitive. And so she was kind of telling me about it. And I'm like, oh, good for you. And so within a couple months, the thought in my mind was there. And I'm like, I want to look into like what this is. And so I started to research it. And I was just amazed by these women. Like, I'm like, these women of all shapes and sizes, ages, like everything. And they're up here like looking amazing. And so I reached back out to my coach. I'm like, hey, what do you think about me doing this? And she's like, absolutely. You're already training like a bodybuilder, eating like a bodybuilder. Let's do it. So I set out I think I started training with her in January of 18. And I did my first show in October of 18. So it was like 10 months of training. And I was so tiny. I think my first stage weight, I was like 97 pounds, I think. Like, very, very tiny, but it definitely lit the fire. Like, I was like, this is fun. This is a great goal to have. And once I pretty much did that first 2 shows, I knew I was hooked.
Yes. It's funny how easy it can be to get hooked. And you had done really well in the NPC. You won 2 out of the 3 shows that you did, and then you won your pro card. at your first national show. And then you recently won first at the Nashville Masters Pro Show. So, I mean, you've had a successful run of shows. So do you think that played a role in how much you got hooked or how you wanted to keep going?
Oh, for sure. I mean, everybody loves to win. Like, there's definitely, there's something about that feeling of being rewarded for all of your hard work. So I think that going into my first show and winning I think my first show, I did win the Masters overall.
That's awesome.
And I was like, going into your first show, you never know. Like, you don't know where you're going to fit. We all have that self-doubt. And I really went into it just as like a one-time bucket list. Like, hey, I'm proud of my journey. Look at where I started. Look at where I'm at. Like, whatever happens, I was like fine with, because I was just so proud to make it to that stage. And then once I won, I was like, oh my gosh, like maybe I am like good enough. Maybe I should continue to do this. And that really just like lit the fire, because I felt validated and that all my hard work was paying off. And I knew that I had it in me. Like, I knew I was a hard worker. I knew I was disciplined. And I just believed in myself that I could just continue to grow and grow and grow. And it really wasn't until, I would say, probably a year after that, maybe a year into my improvement season, that I even thought about turning pro. Like, that wasn't really necessarily the ultimate goal for me. I was just more about improving myself and getting back on stage the next time, and like just building kind of my dream body. Like, that was ultimately my goal. And then turning pro eventually kind of became like more of a reality for me.
Okay. Got it. So you really got to prove to yourself what you were capable of. You had a lot of success. You went through a long first prep and you still loved it, which I think says a lot right there.
Yeah.
How are your preps different over the years or from show to show?
So my first prep was the hardest. A lot of people say the first is the worst. And it definitely was. It was hard. And I think it was for a couple reasons. I think one, it was so new. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know how hungry I was supposed to feel, how tired I was supposed to feel. I didn't have anything to gauge that off of. So I do think that there was times that I really probably pushed a little too hard. I was really hungry a lot of the time. I was extremely fatigued a lot of the time because I wanted it so bad. And I just pushed and pushed and pushed myself to just strive for the best. I don't think I recovered as well. And on top of that, I didn't have as much muscle. So, the more muscle you have, the easier it is to diet. And so I was trying to build muscle and diet all at the same time. And it was a lot. It was definitely very challenging, but on the same hand, it taught me so much about myself and like what I was capable of. So that first prep was really very big growing mentally for me. And then I decided, after I did those first two shows in 2018, I was nationally qualified, but I took one look at my stage pictures and then what the girls at the national level looked like. And I was like, okay, just because I'm qualified to go to nationals does not mean that I should be going to nationals, because I would have walked into that show and probably got last place because I was just not nearly as muscular as them. So I decided to take off 18 months. So I did an 18-month improvement season. And that taught me a lot as well, like getting uncomfortable. I put on, almost 20 pounds, I think, throughout that 18 months. And so I went from being super shredded to 20 pounds heavier, trying to put on as much muscle as I could. And that's not easy either. I think that prep and improvement season are both extremely challenging for different reasons. But yeah, that was a hard 18 months. And then I was so excited to prep. I was like, get me back into prep. Like, I'm just ready. And I started prep in March of 2020 and COVID hit. I was like, oh my God, like, what am I going to do? Like, this is crazy. And I think I was like 2 weeks into my prep, and shows were just being canceled left and right. And, the world was just going crazy. My kids were home from school. I was homeschooling my kids, trying to run our business with my husband. And it was chaotic. I was like, I can't believe this is happening right now. But I decided to just keep going. I was like, you know what? I have been waiting so long for this prep. Like, I want to push through. So that prep definitely taught me a lot about letting go of things that I can't control, like shows being canceled, our gym was shut down right away. I live in California, so it was a hot mess. So that prep definitely taught me a lot as well. So I think that each prep I've gone through has taught me my strengths, my weaknesses, the things I need to work on mentally and physically for the next one. So yeah, it's just always a learning experience. Like, that's one thing I love about this sport is you are always evolving, learning, growing, both physically and mentally. Like, there's never a point where you're done. There's always something to get better at.
So true. And like you said before, like every season brings its own challenges and ways that you have to push yourself, whether that's doing lots of cardio and bringing your food down, or it's pushing your food up and hitting the weights hard and accepting weight gain. Like, there are challenges that each season brings, but like you said, you're always learning and it's teaching you something. And you mentioned too that, or at least in a post you've mentioned this, that you think off season should really be called on season. So I was curious how your intentions or goals in improvement season look different than your intentions and goals on prep.
Yeah. So, obviously on prep, the goal is to shred down, lose the weight, and really reveal all of your hard work. And I feel like that's, like I said, like the off season should be called on season, because that is when the work is done. And that is the day-to-day grind. When you're in the gym, pushing hard every single day, making sure your nutrition is on point, making sure your recovery, all of those things have to be as on as they are when you're in prep. Sorry, my dog is
okay.
In the background.
It's okay.
Yeah. So, I really obviously we're in off season a lot more than we're in prep, or at least we should be. That's how I take it. When I do my preps, I like to get in, get the shows done, and get back out of prep, because it's not a good place to be in for any length of time. So I spend most of my year in improvement season and really focusing on making those gains, making sure that I am, a bodybuilder. We're not bodybuilders are building our bodies up, and we need to make sure we're focusing most of our time, most of our energy into that phase. Otherwise, our preps are just going to be the same over and over and over again. And that's one thing that I never want to bring the same package to the stage every single time. And that's why I do take longer off seasons, because as a natural athlete, it takes a long time to put on muscle. I don't think people truly understand how long it actually takes and how much dedication and hard work and consistency that building takes. And so I put all of my energy, as much as I do into prep, I put into my off season, because I know that is where the magic happens.
So true. It really does. And I think the longer, maybe longer is not the right word, but the more respect you have for the sport and what people are bringing to the stage, the more easy it becomes to grasp that concept, that the improvement season is necessary and you need to take that time. And especially as a natural athlete, it's important. I mean, it's important for everybody and anybody, but because building muscle is difficult, but you need the time in order to do that. And yes, you can still build while you're prepping, but there comes a point where you just can't. You're tapped out. You're running on fumes, really. I mean, as healthy as you can stay on prep is great, but there does come a time where you're like, you can't argue that it gets pretty extreme in order to get to the level that you need to. And you yourself have, I mean, you've put on a lot of muscle. Like I was looking at all your stage shots, I was like, oh my gosh, like you really have developed a lot of muscle over the years. And I think people question if it's possible to do well in this sport as a vegan, and how there's that lower anabolic effect, and that's from the digestibility and the essential amino acid contents and in the plant proteins compared to animal proteins and all of that. And so you can still build muscle, but I wanted to hear from you. One,
absolutely,
how did you overcome those obstacles? And two, how have you been able to capitalize on muscle growth without animal proteins?
Yeah. So, since I was a vegan before I was bodybuilding, like I really don't know any difference. It's not like I was, doing the sport and then went vegan. So this is all I know. So I can't really, I don't know. Like I read all the research, obviously through my nutritional certification. I've done the research, but I feel like, there's always going to be doubters no matter what you're doing. But on the same hand, I'm like, listen, the proof is in the pudding. Like, here I am, a vegan, building muscle. I'm a professional bodybuilder. Like, I don't know. I don't know what like the answer is. I don't know what more people want to hear or see. I think that there is some valid scientific research with, all of the essential amino acids and all of that sort of thing. But, I chose to be vegan for health and then obviously the animal side of it. So if I have to sacrifice a percentage of gains and I have to maybe work a little bit harder, I'm willing to do that. So that's just the choice, that I've made. And, who's to know if I was eating animal proteins, if I would have gained muscle at a faster rate. But like, ultimately that doesn't matter to me because this is the lifestyle that works for me. This is what I've chosen and I'm happy with it. I'm healthy. I'm successful. I'm thriving, like all of those things. So to me, I'm kind of like, well, what could I ask for? Like I've done what I've came to accomplish. And, I just hope that that's kind of why I started my Instagram page, is to just show other people, listen, you can be vegan, you can be plant-based, you can be half and half, you can, all of these things and still succeed in a world that is definitely mostly all about eating chicken all the time. I know there's not a lot of us out there, but I hope that my journey can inspire other people that think that it wasn't possible and can see me and be like, hey, she did it. Listen, I'm a 40-year-old mother, like no really athletic background. Like I didn't even start this journey until I was 37 after having 2 kids. So if I can do it, anybody can do it. That's for sure.
Absolutely. I know we've had a few vegans on here too who share the same sentiment of you can do this. We had Harriet on, we've had, well, Shantae's vegetarian, and then we've had Natalie Matthews, who I know you get inspiration from with recipes and stuff from what I've seen you post, which actually, let's talk about that. Because I've always been curious, and I asked Natalie some questions like this too, because she's known for being a vegan chef. But when you are looking for protein items, let's say someone was like, I really want to start incorporating more vegan items into my program or macros or anything, how can they find or look out for something that will probably have a higher protein content, or what can they look for?
So when it comes to vegan proteins, there's really 3 like main food source proteins. So there's tofu, which I think everybody is well aware of what tofu is. And depending on tofu comes in like firm, soft, or silken. So depending on how like dense or how firm it is how much protein is going to be. So the firmer the tofu, the more protein it's going to have. Just kind of think of it as less water, more protein. So like Trader Joe's, for instance, has an extra firm, high protein tofu. And it is I think it's like 30 grams of protein for a serving. So it's very high in protein. You do get a little bit of fat and carbs with that. So that is the challenge when it comes to especially prepping as a vegan, is that the vegan proteins do have the other macros in it. So you have to be able to pull from, you're not going to get as much rice because, you know, your tofu has some carbs in it. But so then there's tofu, and then there's tempeh, which is a fermented soybean protein. And that one is really good for your health, your gut digestion, because it's a fermented food. So that one it's not quite as high as protein as tofu, but it's up there, but it does have some fat. And then seitan, which is probably what you've seen me posting tons of, and I get that recipe from Natalie Matthews, is like the highest count of protein and the lowest carb and fat. So it's pretty equivalent to like a chicken breast. Like it is all protein, very minimal carbs or fats. And it's awesome because Natalie's recipe, you make them into these little balls. They look like dinner rolls, like little bread rolls. And they have like almost like a bread consistency. And oh my God, it's so good. Wow. It's like I live on seitan during my prep because it's just all protein, and it is gluten. So it's the protein of the of the wheat. So if you're gluten free, you obviously can't have that. So those are like the three main proteins. And then obviously we have all the legumes. So lentils are high in protein. Edamame beans, like those little green beans that you get from Japanese restaurants. And then I use protein powders. I think most competitors use protein powders. It's just a quick and easy source. And even people that aren't vegan tend to digest vegan protein powders better than they do like a whey protein. It's just easier on your digestive system. So I'll use 2 servings of protein powder a day, like in my morning oats, and then again at night for I make a protein pudding where it's just like protein powder and water with some cashew butter, and it's like dessert. I lay in bed every night, like all through my prep, and I like savor every single little bite. It's like the only thing sweet I get in my day. So you know, I mean, I always stick right around 150 grams of protein a day. Like that's kind of average for me for prep and for off season. And I never have any problems hitting it. Like, it's like, that's I don't understand why people can't eat that much protein. Like, you know, as long as I think protein powders obviously help because that's like a easy, really, really easy way to get it in. But yeah, seitan and tofu, like, you know, a couple of servings of those a day and you should be good to go.
That's awesome. Now, do you flavor or maybe season it differently each day when you're making things like seitan?
No, so I usually make a whole batch. So I make 7 days worth. And that's the other great thing about vegan proteins is it doesn't go bad. Like, you know, it's not like when you make the chicken breast and it starts to get that like smelly, slimy. Like I can prep a whole week's worth of seitan or tofu and it stays totally fresh in my fridge. So usually on Sundays, I'll meal prep for the whole week. And I just put it in like big glass containers in my fridge. And then I just measure it out every day. So I pretty much just season all the same just to make life simple. They do make, like Trader Joe's makes tofu that's already seasoned. They have a teriyaki one and a sriracha one. And those are really good. You can just like open the package and eat it. It's like seasoned, cooked, ready to go. So I'll use those out of convenience if I want to like add some special flavor. But I'm really somebody who can eat the same foods every single day and be totally fine with it. Like it doesn't even matter. Especially in prep, I'm like, my food is my fuel and that's all I care about. But it's keeping me alive, keeping me energy in the gym. And I don't really care that much about what it tastes like. Like, I'm just like, I'm a woman on a mission. This is what I got to eat. This is what we're doing. And let's just move on with the day.
For sure. Yeah. I understand that. Like, especially if you're in a routine or a rhythm with it, it's kind of like, well, let's not throw anything in here that could mess with that routine. I do think sometimes it's good to mix it up, especially if you're a person who needs that or wants that. Like, just because you hear Niccole say she doesn't need that doesn't mean you should be like, I shouldn't need that either,
right.
you know?
No, definitely. Yeah. And a really good way too to mix things up is like just different salsas or different sauces or different mustards, like all of those kinds of things. You can have your same base protein and then just throw in different flavors when it comes to like even the low calorie, like barbecue sauces and all of those things. Like, if you're somebody who wants some variety, like those are easy, like changes. Like you just prep your proteins and then you just add whatever you feel like for that day on top of it.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I do that myself. I'm not vegan, but I do that too. And it does make a difference. Some days I'm like, maybe I'll go like Mexican, maybe I'll go Asian, maybe I just put ketchup on this. Yep. It's like whatever, whatever I'm feeling like that day. So how did getting your AFPA certification holistic nutrition get started? And I'm curious about what business you run with your husband. Like, I just want to hear more about your life outside of the sport before we get into more of your journey through it.
Yeah, so the nutrition certification, it was always something when I started reading about going vegan, and I was just like, my eyes were just open to the healing powers of plants. And I was just amazed. Like I was just intrigued by it all. And so when I got into my improvement season, I was like, you know what? Like I have time now. I'm going to start I think that knowledge is so powerful. And I never wanted to like run a business with my nutrition certification. That wasn't anything that I wanted. I just wanted it for my own personal knowledge, for my family, just to live our life healthier. And so it was an all online course. It was a lot of work. Like I hadn't been, back to school in a long time. And I was like, oh, this is a lot of reading, but sorry, it was great. Like I read so much and it was all based on plant-based nutrition. And it kind of covered everything from like, like the healing powers of plants, what plants are like have the most kind of bang for your buck. And it also covered, studied different cultures, the healthy cultures, like what they're doing. And it wasn't just the food, it was the community, it was the relationship with food, it was their activity, all of those sorts of things that are combined into making a healthy lifestyle. How many times a day they eat, all of that kind of stuff. So I just did it because I was interested in it and I wanted to learn more. And it was great. It took me about, I want to say 6 or 7 months to do it all. And I learned a lot. Like I definitely took a lot from it. And I've since helped my family, my friends, of course, when you get into this world of nutrition, training, all that stuff, people start seeing you transform and start seeing you live healthy, and they start reaching out to you and asking you questions. And I love being able to share what I've learned, my knowledge with my friends and my family, and just to help them. So once I got that nutrition certification, I would write meal plans for my mom or for my friend and kind of help them not necessarily go vegan. I would never want to like push somebody into that. But if somebody comes to me and they're interested in like, how do I incorporate more plant-based into my lifestyle? Like what would you suggest doing? I had that information that I was able to give them. So that was a super cool thing for me just to do, and just like, it's kind of like a bucket list, like go back to school, learn something. And then as for the business that me and my husband run, we are strawberry farmers.
Wow.
So we grow a couple hundred. Yeah. So my husband grew up farming. So his family have been farmers for a couple generations, and they actually started as dairy farmers, which is kind of funny because I was like, oh, I'm so glad you're not a dairy farmer anymore, because that would be
That wouldn't really align with
dynamic. Yeah. So his family sold the dairy in, I think, 1990, like around there. And they started farming vegetables. So they grew like lettuce, celery, cauliflower, broccoli, all of those sorts of things. So my husband grew up farming vegetables, and I went to school. I was an X-ray tech at a hospital. And so I worked hospital, corporate, that kind of stuff. My husband was a farmer. And then when we got pregnant with our son in 2010, I really wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. And I really wanted to, raise my kids. And my husband also wanted me to stay at home. So we were kind of looking at finances and, like, okay, how are we going to do this? And so we started to think about starting our own farming business. So we got a small loan and started growing. We rented 5 acres from his family and started our own strawberry business. And in the last, how long has it been? 11 years, we went from 5 acres and just a handful of employees to now we grow over 200 acres and we have like hundreds and hundreds of employees. So we have grown our business extremely fast in the world of, business. And it's definitely, had its challenges and struggles. I was doing all of the payroll side of it, the business side, while having a 2-year-old and a newborn. My husband was out doing all of the farming, all the growing, all of that sort of stuff. And we just made it work. Like, we just grinded really hard and just gave it everything we had. And so now we're like at a place where we have so many people, supporting us, and our employees are amazing. So we can kind of both take a step back and go on with our hobbies. My husband, I don't know if you knew this, my husband's also a professional bodybuilder.
I do. I was going to ask you about
that. Yes. So we both have, that as a hobby. And during last year, it's kind of like a little side note, in 2020, when all of the gyms shut down, and we were like, oh God, this is life-changing for us to not have a gym. Like, yes. I know some people are like, oh, what's the big deal? It's like, no, like, this is what is our passion. Like, we need this physically and mentally. And so we opened our own gym. We built a gym, and we put it out on our property, on our farm. Wow. And it's like a huge warehouse, and it's a private gym. So we don't sell memberships or anything. And we opened it just for family, friends, our employees, other competitors that live near us come, and it's all free. We just we want to just share like our love of the sport and being healthy, especially in the year that we had, like, where health is very important. So we have, our family, our friends kids, like, all come to this gym. Wow. And it's been amazing. It's been amazing to see people that were never into lifting get into lifting, get their kids into the gym. Like, my mother-in-law, 65 years old, she started at the gym. Like, my niece, my nephew, like, all these people that were never really felt comfortable to go into a weight room. It's very intimidating to go into a gym. And so now they have a space, and it's awesome. So so we have our strawberry business, we have our gym out there. And so I'm pretty much at this point a stay-at-home mom. I work, oversee all of the office stuff, but I don't have to put in the hours like I used to anymore. So that's been really nice. And so it just gives me more time to dedicate to my bodybuilding career, because we both know how time consuming it is. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, wow. Oh my gosh. I'm so inspired by you and your family and what you've been able to create. I love that. I think it's awesome. You went out on a limb, so to speak, and said, let's invest in 5 acres, and it's now 200 acres. And to go from a couple employees to hundreds of employees, even that, that alone just takes guts, because that means you wanted to grow and you wanted to,
right.
And you needed to really. I was curious when that was, like, how many years was that? Because you said it was pretty fast.
Yeah, so that was over the span of from 2010, summer of 2010 was when we started our business. So that's 11 years. But each year, so every crop that we turned around, any profit we made, we put right back into the business. And so we really didn't collect much money in the first, I would say, 3-4 years. We just we knew we needed to grow. My husband knew where he wanted to, take the business. And so we just reinvested and really took a lot of risks and a lot of chances, because like you said, like it's a lot. It's a lot of putting yourself out there and taking that risk, especially when we had 2 small children. I was no longer working. Like, we kind of like put all of our eggs in that basket. Like, it was like, we have to like make this work. And I think when you get to that point in a business where it has to work, like failing is not an option, you give it your all. You do whatever it takes to make it successful. And of course, we had times where our crops didn't do so well, and we are at the mercy of Mother Nature, and there's things that we can't control. But when those bad times hit, you just pick up and you just keep going because you have to. Like, there's no option. So so it was, I would say, the first 5 years. So from 2010 to 2015 was the biggest growth. Like, we were multiplying like quickly, and it was scary. My husband had so many sleepless nights. We just had so much going on. Like, it was just kind of, I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, like we had 2 babies, a business. Oh, and we were building a house. We built a house from the ground up. All of this, all in like the same time frame. And yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot. But, we supported each other. We encouraged each other. We were there for each other. When he was down, I tried to pick him up. When I was down, he picked me up. And so I think having that support system of each other was like super key. And, that led into our bodybuilding career also. And like having each other there to support one another was like, I mean, I don't know how people do it that don't have other people to lean on, because this, it's crazy. It's a crazy time. And it was definitely, it was a growing experience for both of us, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. That is so amazing. Now, when you guys got to the point of expanding, were you continuing to rent, or did you end up buying the acres of land to continue and expand your farm? How did that work?
So yeah, it's a good question. So initially we were renting. So my husband's family, there's probably about 25 or 30 owners that owned percentages of the ground. It was all like, cousins of this, like it all got split up over the years. And so one person was kind of in control of that. So we were renting from them. And then we decided, you know what, like this is our future. We were actually the only ones left. His dad was getting ready to retire. So we were the only ones left farming. And so we were like, this is our future. Like this, we have to secure this ground. And so we started purchasing like a couple acres at a time. We would go to family members, hey, do you want to sell? They're like, okay. So we would buy that acre. Then the next, couple months, when we got more money, we're like, okay, can we buy yours? And so we've been able to buy about half of the farmland that's owned by the family right now. So our goal is to continue and buy all of it eventually. So that's been a whole other process. There's about a little over 200 acres. So we own, I think, a little over 100 right now, if my numbers are correct. So that just secures, our business, our future. And then we have the option, when we want to retire, we can rent that ground out to other farmers. And so that kind of is like our retirement. It's our business now, and then in the future will be our retirement or our kids. We have, 2 kids that my son, he's 11 right now, and he wants to be a farmer. Like that's what he wants to do. He wants to be a strawberry farmer. Yeah, so he's all about it. And my husband takes him out to work every Saturday, and they go and drive tractors, and my son is way into it. So I'm assuming that my son will probably be a farmer, but you never know. You never know where that will take you. So we have options when it comes to retirement. But for now, we probably have another 10, 15 years, we think, of running our business, and then we'll see what happens from there.
I love that. I love that you have a vision for it as well, and you're not overly attached to one outcome or the other. It's just staying true to what you want. And I think that is definitely seen in anything. And I appreciate you talking about that. I just find it fascinating. So that's why I wanted to talk about it as well.
Yeah, of course.
Now, are we good on time? I just want to double check.
Yes.
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
We're good. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yep.
Okay, good. I was like, oh my gosh, am I getting ahead of myself? So
no.
Okay, cool. Your husband, let's talk about him, because obviously you guys have been supportive of each other through your business development, through your family development, and also through becoming IFBB pros. He became an IFBB pro. He's also vegan. And I was wondering how embarking on this lifestyle has impacted your marriage and your family life.
Great question. I mean, I think that any competitor can attest to the fact that it will change everything about your life, including your marriage, your relationships with your family, your friends, like all of it, some for the good, some for the bad. So just a little backstory. So when I competed in 2018, I came to my husband and I was like, I think I want to do this. And he was like, what? What's happening? What does this mean? Like, what is this going to look like? So he was like, do it. Let's do it. Let's see what happens. He thought I was crazy. Like, he was like, oh my gosh, Niccole, what are you doing? But he was super supportive, and he got way into it. He started researching. He knew all about the bikini division. He knew who Angelica was. And, he dove in with me. He was like, let's ride this wave together. So we actually went to watch a show before I decided 100% that I was going to sign up for a show. And he was like, wow, I think I could probably do this too. Seeing those guys up there, he was already into the fitness world, and he was already into bodybuilding just as the sport. So he watched me go through it, went to my shows, obviously was my biggest cheerleader. And then I think he saw it, and he was like, I was like, you should do it. Let's do it. Do a show. So I encouraged him to do a show the following year. And I think through the prep, he was like, why did I let you talk me into this? Preps are really hard, but he did great as well. He went in, won his show, pretty much the same journey that I had, he had as well. And so when it came to 2020, we had initially decided to prep together, because we had done 2 separate preps. And I think it was interesting because when he was prepping, I wasn't, so I could kind of help support the business, the kids, kind of take over the responsibilities that he just didn't have the energy for, and then vice versa. So when I was in prep, he was really helping a lot more with household stuff and the kids. So I was like, well, let's see how this would go if we prep together. So that was our plan for 2020. He was already qualified because he competed in 19. So I had to re-qualify. So I was going to do a show a little bit earlier than he was, and then we were going to head to nationals together. And so I was in prep a little bit, started before he did. And that's when 2020 hit. All the shows were being canceled. And he was like, I am not starting a prep when the odds are we're not even going to have a show to do. I'm not doing this. I was like, well, I am. I'm going to do it. And we're just going to see what happens. So I prepped. I went to North Americans, won my pro card. And when we were there, he was like, dang it. Like, why didn't I prep? I should have done this. Like, we could have both been doing this together. And he got back, got a hold of his coach, and the next national show was in 6 weeks. And his coach was like, let's do it. So my husband prepped for little less than 6 weeks and went and won his pro card. I was like, I prepped for 24 weeks to win my pro card, and you won. You prepped for 6 and 1 year. But, you know, he was living the prep lifestyle with me. We obviously weren't going out to eat. You know, he was right there along with me prepping. He was, you know, in the gym with me. He was doing cardio with me. So he was already kind of prepping without really prepping. So he was at a great starting point. So yeah, so we've really been there for each other the whole time. Like, whatever I'm doing, he's kind of doing. Whatever he's doing, I'm kind of doing. And obviously, it turned out great for us. I don't remember your question. I just rambled on about my husband, but
I'm glad that you did.
Yeah, so that was kind of his journey into it. So we turned pro a month apart from each other.
Wow.
In 2020. And it was like, I mean, I don't, like, looking back, I'm like, it's so crazy to think, turning pro is like such a hard thing to do. There's people that try year after year after year to achieve that. And the fact that we went in, both of us, at our first national show and were able to turn pro, like, we definitely don't take that for granted. Like, we count our blessings. We are thankful. But I think it also attests to the fact of how dedicated we are in this lifestyle. Like, we live this lifestyle all year long.
Absolutely. Yeah. You cut out there for a second, but I'm gathering that you guys live this lifestyle together and you went on a very similar journey, which I think is super cool. And now you're both IFBB pros, and having each other's support goes a long way. And I was really curious because you had made a really cool post about how you described your daughter seeing you for you, not for your prep or for your process or for your body. And I was hoping you could bring that here and expand on that, and how your daughter and son see you and your husband, and share that with us.
Yeah. So my kids have obviously been a huge part of this journey. So when I started in 2017, my daughter was only 5, my son was 7. So they don't even really remember me not being a bodybuilder. Like, their only memory of me is doing this sport. And for the first couple of years, so I did my first 2 preps in my home gym. I have this little garage gym that has like a Smith machine, a cable, a couple other, some dumbbells. And they were home with me every single day. They would see their mom get up, go into the gym. They'd come in there, and my daughter would swing on the Smith machine like it was a gymnastics bar. And it really was just something that was part of our life. Like, it was just like, okay, mommy's going to the gym. We're going to go to the gym with her. And then when it came to the food, they're aware that I eat certain foods, but I always make sure that they see, and I never want them to feel like, oh, mommy can't have that. It's, I choose not to have that. I eat these foods because they make me feel good. They give me energy. They make my muscles grow. All of these, I really make sure that they understand that it's not about depriving myself. It's about fueling myself. And these are the things. This is why I don't eat cookies and ice cream every night, because it's not going to help me, go and win my shows. Of course, the kids, they see the trophies. That's all they care about. They're like, did you win? That's all they want to know is, did you win? But they see me working every single day towards a goal. They know ultimately that I'm going to be stepping on stage, and they see me working really hard for that. And I think that lesson for kids is so important. Like, if you want something, you have to work hard for it. No one's going to hand it to you. It's not given to you. It's not guaranteed. And they definitely saw that this year when I didn't win first place, you know, because for the most part, I don't want to sound like I'm bragging, but in my NPC days, for the most part, I won first place. And going into the pro league, I knew that wasn't going to be the case. And I almost welcomed it because I felt like my kids needed to see that you don't always get first place.
Yeah.
And that's not why we do this. It's not always about the trophy. It's not always about winning. That, you know, when we get knocked down, we get back up and we keep trying. So my kids have been a huge part of my journey and watching me grow. And it's so funny because I'll see them like out of the corner of my eye in the gym or when I'm posing, and they'll just be watching me. And it's like, it's those moments that make you realize, like, when you least expect someone to be watching you, they are. And it's kids, it's your friends, it's your family. People are watching you and they're learning from you, and they're taking what you're doing, and, you know, they're seeing it and they're absorbing it. And I hope that my kids, you know, remember me and see me as somebody who works hard, who's dedicated, you know, who has fun with it. Like, the gym is not torture. Like, it's fun. We go in there and we act silly, and we, you know, at our new gym, my daughter brought all her gymnastics mats and we're doing somersaults, and, you know, it's just a fun place for all of us to be. And it's important that my kids, you know, live a healthy lifestyle, and I'm just happy that they get to be a part of it all and see it. And I actually took them to one of my pro shows this year. That was the first time they'd ever seen me compete in person.
Wow.
And I think it was one of my favorite shows. Like, even though I didn't win that one, it was the Tahoe show. It was such a great experience to see their eyes and to see me, you know, all the work they see me every day, and then to see it, you know, with my stage hair and makeup and the tan and the suit and all of that. My daughter just like, oh, I'm going to get emotional. The way she looked at me was like, oh my gosh, my mom is amazing. Like, they were so proud of me, even though I didn't win first place. Like, they didn't care. At that moment, they didn't care. They got to watch me on stage. It was just really cool. It was a really neat moment. And I was so happy that they got, you know, to be there for it. And yeah, I mean, we'll see. You know, I think every parent, we just hope that we're not like damaging our kids. And I never want my kids to look at this lifestyle as restrictive or, you know, like crazy structure. Like, they just see me living my life, and it is what it is. Like, they don't know any different. So yeah, that's kind of how we approach it in our house. And same thing with like the vegan side of it. My kids are not fully vegan. In our house, you know, I mostly cook vegan food for them just because it's by default of what I'm making. But I never want them to like see that lifestyle as like, oh, well, I can't have that. If I go to a party, you know, I can't have pizza because it's not vegan. Like, I don't want that to be like that. Like, when they are out with their grandma or their friends, they can have whatever they want to have. Like, it's not a big deal. Actually, I picked up my daughter from school today, and her math teacher was like, oh, are you her mom? And I was like, yeah. She's like, we had a discussion today, and it was all the kids had to answer where their favorite place to eat was. And my daughter said, at my house, my mom's cooking is my favorite. I was like, oh,
that's awesome.
Like, all the other kids were saying like McDonald's and In-N-Out, and my daughter said that my cooking was her favorite. I was like,
that's so sweet.
I'm doing something right. So that was super cool. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. I really appreciate just your perspective as a mom and a competitor, and how you're approaching this with them, as well as how you see and see them experience you living this lifestyle.
Yeah.
I think that's really special. And you know, a lot of people maybe don't want to compete when they become a mom, or they're afraid to, or they don't know if it's possible. And I think you're really good proof that it is possible, and it can be done in a healthy way.
Exactly. And I think it's important especially for moms, to have something for themselves, because we tend to give everything to everybody else. You know, we give everything to our kids, to our husbands, to our family. And it's like, it's important for those people that love you to also see that you take time for yourself, because it really makes, when you're feeding yourself, it makes you a better person in general, which makes you a better mother, makes you a better wife. Like, you can't just give all the time. You have to do something for yourself. And for me, finding fitness, having the time in the gym, like, that is my time. And my kids respect that time. They know that it's important, and they know, like, all right, mom's in the gym. Like, they actually know when they come into the gym, if I'm in the middle of a set, they can't talk to me. Like, they'll like walk in and go, Mom, and then they'll cover their mouth like, oops, sorry. And they'll stand there and they'll wait until I'm done with my set, because, you know, they know, like, this is my time. You guys need to respect what I'm doing here. Yes. So I think it's super important for moms, no matter what it is, for any mom to have something for themselves, an outlet for themselves, because we will go crazy if we just give all the time.
Yeah. And that's for sure. And then if your outlet is also maybe giving and not so much pouring into yourself, that can take a toll.
Right.
So when you got into this, and your family obviously started getting into it with you, which I think is awesome, there are some things that we have to accept as competitors. And you kind of talked a little bit about some of those things, like the hunger and the low energy. And of course, mentally, we have to be okay with that. The hunger, low sleep, judgment of our bodies, body aches, those types of things that can come with prep. What do you do to work on your mindset throughout this process?
Yeah, I mean, prep definitely will break you down to your lowest. And I am no different than everybody else. I experience the lowest of lows, like days where I just think, like, I cannot do this all. Like, I can't do it all. So what I really have tried my best to do is to take like an hour, 45 minutes every day. For me, it's that 2:00 window right before I get my kids. Most of my job is done when it comes to like the business side, and the gym's done. And I sit down and I get myself a cup of coffee, and I just take a moment for myself, and I really reflect on everything that I'm doing, you know, that my body is functioning for me, that I need to also respect it and give it some rest. So implementing mental and physical rest every single day, making sure that I'm, you know, okay, and just like breathing sometimes, and doing that right before I get my kids from school, so that I can be present with them and not feel like that cranky mom, like, oh, like I'm spinning my wheels, you know, all day long. So definitely getting some downtime has been huge. I really implemented that like consistently throughout this whole prep, because you can, you know, we get in that mindset when we're prep, we are go, go, go. And we just go until we like collapse. And that doesn't make you a better athlete, a better person, a better mom, a better wife. Like, you have to give yourself a break. And, you know, I also stopped trying to do it all and be it all. Like, if the laundry didn't get done that day, I was like, oh, well, I got my cardio done and I got my workout in and my kids are fed. Like, that's going to have to be good enough for the day. And then communicating with my husband, like he knows, we've been together for 15 years. He has a very good handle on my mood and how I'm feeling and how my energy was. So he would be like, do you want me to go pick the kids up today? Like, you know, especially if it was leg day, he knows that I am like wiped out. He would go get me my refeeds, or, you know, just those little things. When it came to like intimacy, he kind of knew. He could feel me out, like, oh yeah, she's pretty tired tonight. Like, this is probably not going to happen, you know? So I think just being, having that support system, letting them know how you're feeling. My friends and my family, they pretty much knew, like, Nicole's not going to come to something if it's past 7:00 at night. There's just no way, because like, they respected my energy and my time, and they respected what I was doing. And in the beginning, you know, they didn't understand that. Like, what do you mean? Why can't you come? Like, I'm like, I'm tired. That's why I can't come. So I think just setting my boundaries and preserving my energy for the things that needed it was huge for me. I did not do that my first prep. And I realized that you have to set up your boundaries for sure going on, because yeah, you could run yourself into the ground trying to do everything.
Absolutely. I think I really appreciate how you said stop trying to be and do everything all the time. And you said preserve your energy for what really matters most to you, or maybe what's more of a priority in that moment or that day. And I think it could be hard to accept that at first, but once you do and you get in your groove and you get used to having those conversations and setting those boundaries, people start to understand, or they don't, and that happens too sometimes.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
But it's good that you do have a lot of support and you have people who understand. And this sport ultimately is very validating, whether we win or not. It's still validating. And I was hoping you could share like what your idea of winning is and what validates you in the sport.
Absolutely. So every year I write down kind of my goals for the next year. So I actually just made a post like 20 minutes ago about this. I was in my home gym in my garage today, and I have it written on the wall in permanent marker, a bunch of quotes and just kind of like a whole like inspiration wall. And part of it was 2021, like, what are my goals? And it was, you know, do a pro debut, do an open show with all of my idols in this sport, you know, to be able to be on the stage with the top girls was like amazing. I wanted to bring in nice big full glutes. I wanted to win a Masters Pro show. I wanted a tiara because my daughter really wanted a tiara. Like, she saw some other girls that won shows and got tiaras. I was like, why don't you have a tiara? So, you know, I kind of write all those little goals down, and each one of those is a win. Like, just stepping on a pro stage to me was a win. Like, listen, I've made it. I prepped. I'm here on a pro stage. Like, who would have thought 3 years ago? I didn't even know this was even a thing. And here I am standing on the stage with the top athletes in the world. Like, that is a huge win for me. Like, I don't care if I came in dead last. Like, that is a win. And building my body, building, you know, bigger glutes, like, that was something that I always, you know, I'm not genetically gifted in that department, and I had to work really hard to build my glutes, and that was something I really wanted. And to see my glutes on the stage for the first time on the pro stage, I was like, oh my God, is that me? Like, I couldn't believe it. And it was just such a feeling of like accomplishment, because every day I worked and I visualized, and I was like, I am going to have goal glutes on that stage. Like, if I had to kill myself to do it, I'm going to do it. And I was so proud of the package that I brought to each one of my pro shows, to be honest with you. Like, you know, it doesn't really matter if you win first place, because ultimately that's just someone's opinion. That's, you know, there's a panel of 5 judges up there. Like, that is not why I do the sport. I don't do it so that Sandy can say, oh, you were the best one today. Like, I do it because I want to feel like I'm the best version of me that day. And yes, it feels great for somebody else to, you know, validate that for you and you get the medal, but ultimately that is not why I do this. And I hope that, you know, everybody does it for their own reasons, not to win, because if you're out there just to win, it's going to be a rough road, especially when you get to that national and pro level. Like, it is, you know, few and far in between that actually get to win. So yeah, so my wins are really just those little goals. Like, did I do better this time than last time? And even show to show, was my posing better? Did I feel more confident? Did I feel calmer? You know, all of those little things that you can improve on are big wins, because that's how ultimately you get better and better and better. So I just kind of like, I don't really put that much pressure on getting first place, all of those things, because it's like, it doesn't really matter. That doesn't validate anything. Like, we don't, some shows you win money, but for the most part, like, you don't win anything when you win first place. You just get a medal. Like, that's all it is. It's, you know, it's the validation of internal validation that feels amazing. Like, I stood up there amongst the greats. I'm here. I've made it. Like, that's really all I need.
I love that. I appreciate and love how much you focus on your goals and you let that be what drives you more so than the end result. It's like that process of getting there and accepting, oh wow, I made it and this is amazing, but I improved, and that's what matters, and that's validating. And I love that. I also think that it's evident that you are focused on that because you've created a lot of those goals. They've come to reality for you. And when you turned pro at your first national show, what then inspired you to compete in the Open and Masters for that show, and then to go on to your pro debut after that?
Yeah, so going into my first national show, I actually had all of the shows lined up. So I was like, okay, we're going to do North Americans, and then we're going to do Masters Nationals, and then we're going to do Universe. Like, we're just going to do them all, and hopefully I can move up the ranks. And my coach was like, well, you know, you might turn pro. And I was like, oh, nobody turns pro at their first national show. And I was like, I'm going to go in, I'm going to do the Masters, I'm going to do the Open. I just wanted to get as much stage experience as I could. So I think anybody who's getting into competing, especially if you're a Masters, you know, do every division that you can do. Like, there's nothing wrong with a Masters doing Open. Many times, I think all of my Open divisions, I placed top 5 in my NPC. Actually, ironically, when I turned pro, was the worst placing I had ever placed, because I did the Open as well. So I got 10th in Open, got first in Masters, which that's where I got my pro card. So it was just funny to see, like, here I just turned pro and then I got 10th place in the Open division. But that just shows you the caliber of athletes at a national stage. So yeah, so when I turned pro, I was like, okay, obviously I've always done much better in the Masters division than I have in Open. So that was kind of my focus going into my pro debuts, was to do the Masters shows. So when I set out and looked at the schedule, I was like, okay, these are all the Masters shows. And a lot of the Masters shows also have the Open division. Mm-hmm. So you're like, since you're there, you're prepped, why not do it, right? Like, you stand up there. So the first pro show I did was a last minute add-on, and it was like 2 hours from my house. They had just moved that show, and I was like, you know what, I should probably just go get some tweaks out, get those, you know, pro debut nerves out, and just see where I was. So I went into it pretty confident. Like, I didn't really have any expectations going into it. And girl, when I tell you, I was like, oh my God, this is like next level. It definitely brought me down to reality a little bit. I think I didn't place dead last, but I think I was like 13th out of 15th or something like that. And I'm like, okay, welcome to the pro league. Like, this is no longer like the NPC. And I remember thinking, like, this is like, people that are trying to get a pro card are going to kill me for saying this, but I remember thinking, like, I miss the NPC. Like, I miss going up there and feeling confident, and like, I probably will get top call outs. You know, it's just a different level when you get to the pro league. But I came home and I had a week between that pro debut and my first Masters pro show. So we kind of, you know, made some changes and got a little bit leaner in the 7 days that I could, and went to Pittsburgh and got 5th place at the Masters. So I was like, okay, all right, we're like back into that top call outs. And then, you know, to be honest with you, I was a little afraid of that open division, just because it's like, it just kind of hits your heart a little bit when you don't, you know, place that well. And I knew that the Masters was kind of where I needed to be anyway. So for my next couple of shows, I did not even do the open. I was like, I'm not standing on that stage. And one of them was the Tampa Pro, which obviously Lorelai was there, Issa was there, Deraja was there. I mean, all of the top girls were there. So I was like, really, why am I standing on the stage with them? And then I ended up getting second place in the Masters. And the girl who got first took like 8th or 9th in the open. And I'm like, dang, like maybe I should have done the open. I could have maybe got like top 10 in the open. So that was a big lesson for me to learn. Like, I need to not be afraid of doing something scary. Like, we need to put ourselves out there. And I remember coming back and thinking, when I first started in the NPC, like, that was one thing that I was proud of. Like, I stepped way out of my comfort zone. Like, I was like, let's just do this. Like, I wasn't afraid. And I think because I was so naive maybe to the sport that I just did it. And the more I got into the sport, I got a little bit like in my head about it. And it was a lesson learned. Like, from here on out, like, I'm going back to that old Niccole where I'm not afraid. I'm putting myself out there and I'm just doing it. I'm just going to go out there and, you know, do everything I can. So then I went to Nashville and did both the open and the Masters. And obviously I won the Masters, and then I can't remember what I placed in open, but it was like that top half of the girls. So I was like, I was really proud about that. I was like, not only did I put myself back out there, but I placed in that top, you know, that top half of the girls. So for me, that was another big win of just, you know, not being afraid of the open division and just doing it. Just like, what do you have to lose? Like, it's just a bikini competition. Like, I don't have to prove anything to anybody. Like, I'm just doing it for me. So that was definitely a lesson learned through this first pro debuts, for sure.
Yeah, I was really wanting you to share those lessons, and I'm glad that you did, and the various things you did to put yourself out there and what you realized. And you don't have to answer this question, but I was wondering if you feel like the judging is different for Masters than open.
I don't think the judging is different. I'll tell you about some difference of judging in a minute. I feel like it's the same. You know, obviously you're being judged on who you're standing next to, right? So Masters is going to bring a different look. So when it comes to the Masters, we tend to have thinner skin. Our upper bodies lean out a lot. So we have a different look to us. So I feel like there is a difference of the athletes and the Masters division versus the open division. But I don't think the judging necessarily is different. It's just a matter of who's up there, who they're comparing you to. If you have, you know, a state of 10 girls and you have 8 of them are 25-year-olds and you have 2 that are 40-year-olds, well, the 40-year-olds are going to look a whole lot different than the 20-year-olds. So the judges have to, you know, pick the best of that. So I don't know that it's different. It's obviously, I don't want to say it's less competitive, but there's less people. So, you know, usually your Masters divisions are 15, you know, 12, 15, whereas like the Opens, there's like 30 something girls. So it's not as many people, but I mean, I don't know if you've looked at some of the Masters girls, like,
oh my gosh,
they bring it. Like, I feel like I feel like the advantage that Masters have is we are usually very dialed in our life and a little more settled. our jobs, our, all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
So we have the ability to give it our all. Like we are out there like going 100%. And not that the open girls aren't, but there's a lot of dynamics that are going on. And I feel like master women, they're very dedicated, and just meeting and talking to all these girls backstage, like we're all the same. We are 100% on at all times, like driven. And I think it's something to do with the fact that we are older and we know we have to maybe work a little bit harder. We have to give a little bit more to it. That those girls, I mean, they're an amazing group of women. Like it's pretty cool to get back there and meet these women. They all have kids, families, like all this stuff. We're not the young sponsored athletes like a lot of the open, top open girls are. That is their job. That is their career. They are sponsored athletes. They get paid to do this. Like that's not most of the masters. So yeah, so I feel like that's kind of the difference. I did experience different judging criteria based on the shows that I did. So I did 5 pro shows, and they were all a week apart. So my physique obviously didn't change that much in that 5 weeks, but the judging was quite different. And I feel like each head judge has a different preference. And it's really getting to know the judges. I know what judges like me now. Like throughout this experience, I'm like, okay, Sandy and Tyler, they like my look. So I think moving forward in my pro career, I will probably choose shows that they're judging because they like me. And there's other judges that they like a different look. And so I didn't place as well. So I think you need to be a little bit more. So I feel like muscle wise, I am right there with the top girls. Like I don't feel like too many of the girls have like much more muscle maturity or density than I do. My feedback was to grow my upper body a little bit. And I think what happens when I lean out, my upper body leans out really fast and I start losing some volume. And I get really lean, but for some reason when I get on stage, I don't appear as lean. And I don't know if it's my posing, and we kind of were like trying to tweak, some of those things. So I think I could probably come in a little bit leaner than I did, which kind of freaked me out because I was like, I felt so lean this year. Yeah, but I did get some feedback that, I was not especially my lower half. I think women, we tend to hold our body fat in our lower half, and I'm no different. So my tie-ins weren't necessarily as sharp in the first couple weeks. Yeah. So, I mean, I feel like I didn't get too much feedback that was like, oh, you need to grow, significantly more. Like even Sandy, she told me, your glutes are like perfect, which I was so happy because that was like my main focus this year.
Awesome.
Yeah. And so she was like, just put on some upper body size and come back next year. So that's kind of the plan, is just like, I feel like there's phases in bodybuilding. Initially you're like building your whole body, right? You're building the foundation, the structure, like everything has to grow. And then you kind of transition into like the bikini bodybuilding, where we're focusing on our glutes, our hamstrings, our shoulders, our lats, like the bikini criteria. And now I feel like I've kind of built that bikini body. So now I'm just like sculpting. Like I'm just adding some details, adding a little bit sharper tie-ins, adding a little more cap to my shoulders. So it's not like a whole lot of changes. And honestly, like I have to live in my body, and I don't want to continue to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Like I'm a small person, and I like to still look feminine and girly, and I don't want to just be getting huge. Like a lot of these girls, they're just really big. So I have to find where I'm comfortable at living in my body, and I can't just build it for the stage. Like I want to feel comfortable with what what my body looks like. So yeah, depending on where this sport goes is how long I will do it. Like, I'm not just going to just, keep getting bigger and bigger. I think that bikini is definitely capping. I think Sandy's putting like a cap on, like, okay, girls, like, we can't be having these massive glutes. Like, we've been seeing Lorelai, right? She came in with huge glutes. They're calling her the wagon because, like, her glutes were just so big, and they're like, okay, we need to dial it back. So I'm happy to see them putting, stop to some of that bikini, because bikini is supposed to be that attainable look.
Yeah.
And, the bigger the girls get, it's kind of like, okay, well, that's not really attainable anymore.
I'm excited for the Arnold tomorrow, because I think that will give us insight, which it's funny because we're recording this now and this episode won't come out for a while. So you guys were literally recording this day before the Arnold, but like, I think that will be telling of what they're looking for. And then going into the Olympia as well, like when Issa won the Olympia, like, I think arguably that was one of the most impactful on the bikini criteria, because you saw everybody started building their lats like crazy. Everyone started doing vacuums like crazy. Like, things really, I felt, changed when she won. And so I think then it changed again, when Janet took it. So it'll be interesting to see what happens at the Arnold this year, and then at the Olympia only a couple weeks later.
Yeah, I agree. And from what I've been seeing, so when I competed at Tampa Pro, they were calling that like the mini Olympia, right? Because all those top girls were there, and it was so cool to be able to be there and see them all in person. I have a picture of me backstage with like all the top girls, and I'm like a little tiny person compared to
that's awesome.
Them. But yeah, it was really funny. But yeah, to see them all in person and to really look at their physiques, like, I feel like everybody is coming in pretty lean and dialing back that muscle. Like you said, even Issa, like from last year to this year, I was backstage talking with her, and she's tiny. Like, they're all little people. Like, we look really big on stage, but like, we're really all very small.
Yeah.
But she's definitely come down a lot from where she was at last year. And I think that her, coming off of that Olympia win, getting knocked down to sixth place, I mean, was a huge statement. So yeah, I'm excited for Arnold this weekend too, because I think it's going to be a big telltale. I have my favorites going. I think we all do.
Would you share your favorites?
Yes. I mean, I think obviously Ashley Kay, I think that she is the GOAT. Like, she's amazing. But I love Lorelai. I love her openness on Instagram. I feel like a lot of the top bikini girls, I don't want to say they're not transparent, but they don't share a lot about the journey, right? Like, you don't see throughout the year a lot of their journey. And I feel like Lorelai, she puts it all out there. She puts out her improvement season. She has videos of her in the gym in like baggy sweatpants, hair in a top knot, sweaty, no makeup, just grinding. And she shows the sport as a whole. She doesn't glamorize it. It's not just the stage. And she really, puts out there all the work. And I feel like when she did Chicago Pro this year, and they told her, to bring it down, and this last month that she's been grinding, and it's like, you can just see the work that she's put in. And she's, even though she did not want to downsize her glutes because she loves her big glutes and she's worked hard for that, she recognizes that, I am a bikini pro. This is what they want to see. So I will do whatever it takes. And so she has lost, I think, 7 pounds off of her already super lean frame just to bring down her glutes to match what the judges said. And I think that is what this sport is about. Like, you do what you take, you listen to the judges, like, you have to take some of your own personal likes and dislikes out of it and bring what the judges want to see. So I hope that Lorelai does really well. I just think that she's a great representation of this sport, and I think a lot of people can learn a lot from her and what she puts out. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that.
I mean, they're all great though.
I know. And you've met a lot of them too. And yeah, they're all really sweet. And I had Laura Lee on this show like a long time ago, like years ago. And it was awesome because she was so open. And I've had Ashley Kay on and she's so open. So I think we're blessed to have a lot of great women who are in this sport. And I think you have to, this sport requires a lot and a special type of person, I think, to get in it. So it'll be cool to see what happens. And I'm also excited to watch your journey unfold. And you're welcome. Of course, see where this takes you. And before we sign off, I'd love if you could share your best advice for people who've never competed before but want to, and then your best advice for those on their road to pro.
Okay, so for someone who's never competed, I would say step one would be to hire a coach. This world of competing there's a lot to it. It's not just, training like a lifestyle person. Like, it's not just going to the gym and like, oh, I'm going to do these exercises. Like, there's so many ins and outs that a coach can help guide you through, that if you hire a coach from day one, not only will you learn so much, like, it's like, I mean, all this information into like one concentrated time, but you will have the right guidance and really set yourself up for success. Because if you try to do it on your own or you just hire a personal trainer, there's going to be so much discouragement and second guessing and wondering if you're doing it right. Like, just hire a good coach. They're like a couple $100s a month. And if you're going to set out to be a competitor, making sure that you have the finances, because it's not a cheap sport. And I think starting with a coach is the best investment that you can make, because they will get you, and you hire a good coach and they will get you to that top if you listen to what they say. So I would say that's definitely step one. And then going to a show like I did. I went to a show, sat down, I watched it, I took a bunch of videos so that I could, look back on it all, and just making sure that that's something that you really want to do, because it can look glamorous online, but seeing it in person and seeing it, sometimes they're in these little cheesy auditoriums with a makeshift stage. Like, it's not really that glamorous. So if you're thinking you're like doing a, huge beauty pageant, you're, quite mistaken. So I would say go to a show, make sure that, seeing those girls walk across that stage in those heels, half naked, that's something that you can actually like do. And then just dedicate yourself. Once you decide, yes, I'm going to do this, hire a coach and give it your all. And don't be afraid to become somewhat obsessed with it. I know that this world, the term balance, finding balance in life and all of these things, which I understand where people come from, but this sport is not the best for having a balance in life. So if it's, you really have to give it your all, and you have to be able to let some parts of your normal life take a back seat to the competitive life and really dedicate yourself to it, because it's not easy. And especially nowadays, this sport, even at the regional level, those girls are coming and looking like pros. So work hard, dedicate yourself, hire a good coach for sure. And then what was the other one? Somebody on the road to pro?
Exactly.
Was that the other one?
Yes.
So if you're on your road to pro, you're heading to national stages. Obviously, the same thing, having a good coach that is turning people pro, that has a history of knowing, what it takes to be a pro, and giving it your all. Like, if you are wanting to be a pro, you have to be a pro before you actually earn it. You have to be living that lifestyle, acting like a pro at all times, training like a pro, eating like a pro, all of those lifestyle things that you think make somebody a pro, you need to be doing prior to that. Like if you think about the top girls, the Janets, the Angelicas, the Isas, what are they doing? Okay, you have to emulate that. Like you need to be doing the same things that they're doing. They're staying consistent all year long. They're making sure that they're taking a proper off season. They're not trying to do shows all year long. I think that being able to know when you need to call it a season is huge as well. Doing national show after national show after national show. And if you're not placing in that top 5, like maybe being like, okay, I need to call it quits for now, build, take the feedback and come back undeniable for that next, national season. Because, the ultimate goal, yes, I understand, is to be a pro, but you need to be improving and building your body so that you feel like when you make it to that pro card that you can step on that pro stage and look like a pro. You need to just already be a pro. So coming in that undeniable for me is just the best approach. Like you don't want to be spinning your wheels. Like go in, see where you're at. If you're not placing that top 5, get into a building season and then come back undeniable when you're ready.
Amazing. I love that. I love the word undeniable, especially in this sport. And I think getting that consistency is so important, and building up to the levels that you need to be at to be successful is important. And you've shared a lot of really awesome things here from your journey and your experiences, which I appreciate. And I'd love if you could share how everybody can connect with you.
Yeah, so I am pretty much solely on Instagram, and I am Niccole. So my name is spelled with 2 C's, Niccole, Gone Vegan _IFBB Pro. And I love getting messages and connecting with other girls. I'm like pretty much an open book on my Instagram. People will ask me questions, and I will be more than willing to share everything that I have learned through my journey with you guys. So so come find me and reach out and say hi.
Amazing. I'll put your Instagram link in the show notes. That's always on celestial.fit/podcast. If you guys are listening to this episode right away, it'll be at the top of that page. If you're listening in the future, just scroll down to the category section and find Niccole Guggia on the alphabetical ordered names. And you can see all her show notes, timestamps, and resources, and then the link to her Instagram as well. I really appreciate when you guys rate, review, subscribe, and share. It goes a long way for me. And I know when you reach out to the athletes or you tag them, it goes a long way for them as well. So really appreciate you guys tuning in every week, or if this is your first time, thank you for joining us. And Niccole, thank you again for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so fun to be able to talk all things bodybuilding with somebody who understands it. I know that in our real lives, there's not too many people that we can chat about this stuff with. So It was super fun. I enjoyed it.
Oh, good. So fulfilling for me too. And I hope that you guys all enjoyed listening. So hope you have an amazing rest of your day, night, or morning, wherever you are in the world.